Welcome to our podcast.
Hello, everyone. Can I ask you something? When was the last time you had a whole day without worrying about anything? Not 1 hour, not 10 minutes, a whole day. Most of us can't even remember. We wake up carrying yesterday. We spend today chasing tomorrow. And somewhere in between, we forget that this moment is the only place where life is actually happening. It's strange. We know how to charge our phones every night, but we rarely recharge our own hearts. Tonight isn't about pretending everything is perfect. It's about learning how to smile without waiting for a perfect life. Because maybe the happiest people are not the ones who have the easiest lives. Maybe they are simply the ones who stopped arguing with reality. Stay with me tonight. By the end of this conversation, I hope you'll close your eyes feeling a little lighter than when you pressed play. Positivity isn't waking up excited every morning. Sometimes positivity is simply brushing your teeth even when your heart feels heavy. It is making your bed after a bad dream. It is answering one message instead of disappearing from everyone. It is drinking one glass of water when your mind says nothing matters. Tiny actions are quiet promises. They whisper, "I'm still here." Most people think strength makes people smile. I think smiling creates strength. Not the smile you wear for strangers. The tiny smile that says, "I didn't give up today." There is a flower that grows through concrete. Nobody tells the concrete to become softer. The flower simply keeps growing. Maybe life isn't asking us to wait for easier days. Maybe life is asking us to become that flower. Thomas. The strongest people aren't loud. They don't announce their battles. Sometimes they are the person making breakfast while their heart is quietly breaking. Sometimes they are the person laughing with friends after crying alone. Sometimes they are you, still breathing, still trying, still believing that tomorrow deserves another chance. And honestly, that is already something beautiful. Sometimes I wonder if we misunderstand what a positive life really looks like. Maybe it isn't a life without storms. Maybe it's a life where you finally stop blaming the rain. Because rain has never apologized for falling. The wind has never explained why it changed direction. Nature simply keeps moving. Maybe we should too. There is something peaceful about accepting that not, everything needs to make sense today. Some answers arrive late. Some dreams take the long road. Some doors stay closed because another one is quietly opening, where we haven't looked yet. Life is funny. When we are children, we can't wait to grow up. When we become adults, we miss being children. We spend so much time wishing to be somewhere else that we forget to notice where we already are. Maybe happiness isn't hiding in another city, or another job, or another version of yourself. Maybe it has been waiting patiently inside this ordinary day. We just walked past it too quickly. Have you noticed how kind we are to flowers? We water them. We give them sunlight. We wait for them to bloom. But when it comes to ourselves, we expect instant results. One bad week, and we think we are failing. One mistake, and we question our worth. One rejection, and we believe the whole world has rejected us. If we treated flowers the way we sometimes treat ourselves, no garden would survive. Growth has always needed patience, so does healing. Not every quiet season is empty. Sometimes, life grows underground before anyone can see it. Roots don't compete with flowers. They simply do their job. Maybe this season of your life is asking you to grow roots instead of chasing applause. There is nothing wrong with being unseen for a while. The strongest foundations are usually invisible. Another thing I have learned is that peace is surprisingly quiet. Excitement makes a lot of noise. Success attracts attention, but peace whispers. It sounds like drinking tea without checking your phone. It sounds like taking a deep breath before answering. It sounds like saying, "That's enough for today." We often chase loud happiness and ignore quiet peace. But quiet peace lasts much longer. Sometimes we think we need a completely different life. Maybe we only need a different conversation with ourselves. Instead of saying, "I'm behind," what if we said, "I'm on my own path," instead of saying, "I'll never be enough"? What if we asked, "Enough for whom?" Sometimes the words we repeat become the walls we live inside. Choose your words carefully. Your heart is always listening. And here's something I hope you never forget. Your value has never depended on your busiest day or your biggest achievement. A candle doesn't become less valuable because nobody is watching it burn. Its purpose is still the same. Maybe your kindness has already changed someone's day without you knowing. Maybe your smile stopped another person from giving up. Maybe your presence is more important than your performance. Not everything meaningful receives applause. The moon never asks for permission to shine. Neither should your heart. If today felt heavy, that's okay. Heavy days don't last forever. Even winter quietly prepares for spring. Even the longest night eventually welcomes the morning. Life has a gentle way of reminding us that nothing stays the same forever. Not the pain, not the fear, not even the loneliness. Everything moves, everything changes, and maybe that's the most comforting thought of all. So tonight, before you fall asleep, don't ask yourself whether you were perfect. Ask yourself something much simpler. Did I keep going? Did I choose kindness at least once? Did I give myself one small reason to hope? If the answer is yes, then today was never wasted. Sometimes I think life is like carrying a glass of water. The glass is never the problem. The weight isn't impossible. But keep holding it for hours, and even the lightest glass begins to feel unbearable. Our thoughts work the same way. A single worry isn't what breaks us. It's refusing to put it down. Some people carry yesterday into today. Then they carry today into tomorrow. Years pass. The glass never leaves their hand. Maybe tonight is a good night to set it down. Not forever, just long enough to let your heart rest. Because even the strongest heart needs a quiet place to breathe. There is a tree that stands through every season. In spring, it blooms. In summer, it gives shade. In autumn, it lets go. In winter, it stands empty. Yet it never believes winter is the end of its story. It knows something we often forget. Losing leaves is not losing life. Maybe you've lost something recently. A dream, a relationship, a version of yourself. It hurts. Of course it hurts. But losing leaves doesn't mean your roots are gone. Sometimes life removes what you cannot carry into the next season. Not to punish you, to prepare you. I used to believe that confidence came from always knowing the right answer. Now I think confidence is much quieter. It says, I don't know what's coming, but I'll meet it anyway. That kind of courage doesn't make headlines. Nobody claps for it, yet it changes lives every single day. Because fear doesn't disappear before brave people move. They simply stop waiting for fear to leave. Another beautiful thing about life is that healing is rarely dramatic. Movies make healing look like one powerful speech. Real life is different. Healing looks like laughing a little louder than yesterday, sleeping a little better, thinking about the past a little less, smiling without forcing it. One day you realize that something which once broke your heart hasn't, visited your mind all afternoon. You don't notice the exact moment you become stronger. Just like sunrise, darkness never asks permission to leave. Light simply arrives. Maybe your healing is happening the same way. Quietly, patiently, without asking for attention. Have you ever watched the ocean? Every wave reaches the shore. Every wave disappears. Then another one comes. The ocean never cries because one wave is gone. It trusts there will always be another. Life is full of endings. A conversation ends. A season ends. A chapter ends. Even sadness ends. The problem is that we often stare at the wave that disappeared, instead of noticing the next one already coming toward us. Hope isn't always loud. Sometimes hope is simply refusing to believe that your best days are already behind you. Sometimes it whispers, there is more. More laughter, more peace, more people to meet, more sunsets to watch, more reasons to smile that you haven't discovered yet. And maybe that is enough to keep walking. Don't compare your beginning to someone else's middle. Some flowers bloom after a few weeks. Some trees take years before giving fruit. Neither one is late. Nature never hurries. Yet everything arrives at the right time. Maybe your life isn't delayed. Maybe it is simply growing at the speed your soul needs. Tonight, if your mind begins listing everything that isn't perfect, gently interrupt it. Ask a different question. What is still beautiful? Maybe it's the quiet in this room. Maybe it's your heartbeat. Maybe it's the fact that after everything life has asked of you, you are still choosing kindness, still choosing hope, still choosing to begin again. That is not weakness. That is one of the strongest decisions a person can make. So when tomorrow arrives, don't promise yourself a perfect day. Promise yourself a gentle heart. Because a gentle heart survives places where a hard heart breaks. And perhaps the most positive thing you can do isn't to smile all the time. It's to trust that even on the days when you can't smile, life is still quietly working in your favor. One small moment, one deep breath, one ordinary miracle at a time. Before we say goodnight, I want to leave you with one final thought. You don't have to become a different person tomorrow. You don't have to wake up fearless. You don't have to have every answer. Just wake up, open the window, take one deep breath, and give life one more chance to surprise you. Because some of the most beautiful chapters don't begin with confidence. They begin with a quiet decision. I'll try again. If today was kind to you, hold on to the gratitude. If today was difficult, leave the weight here. You don't need to carry it into your dreams. The night was never meant to keep your worries. It was meant to help you rest. So let your thoughts become lighter. Let your shoulders relax. Let your heart remember that it has already survived so much. You are not behind. You are not broken. You are simply growing in ways that cannot always be seen. And one day, you'll look back and realize that these ordinary nights, the quiet conversations, the small moments of hope, the gentle reminders to keep going, we're quietly building a stronger, calmer, kinder version of you. Thank you for spending these peaceful moments with me. If this conversation brought even a little comfort to your heart, I hope you'll come back tomorrow night. Until then, be gentle with yourself, be patient with your journey, keep a little hope in your pocket, and never forget. The sun never rushes to rise, yet every morning, it fills the world with light. Maybe your light is arriving the same way. Slowly, quietly, beautifully. Sleep well. Take care of your heart. And I'll see you in our next conversation. Good night. Hello, everyone. Tonight, this isn't a lesson. It isn't advice. And it certainly isn't another list of things you need to fix before your life finally becomes good enough. Tonight, I'd simply like to write a letter to the version of you that has been quietly whispering, there has to be more than this. Maybe nobody else has heard that whisper, but you have. Every time you smiled while feeling empty, every time you said, I'm okay, because explaining your heart felt too exhausting, every time you promised yourself, I'll change someday, maybe, and someday has been waiting for you all along. But changing your life is a funny idea. Most of us imagine a dramatic beginning. We picture ourselves waking up before sunrise, running 5 miles, reading 10 books, drinking green juice, somehow becoming a completely different person before breakfast. Life watches us with a little smile, because it knows something we don't. Real change almost never arrives wearing fireworks. It arrives wearing ordinary clothes. It quietly knocks on the door while you're busy looking out the window. Sometimes change is simply turning your phone over during dinner. Sometimes it's saying no without writing a 5-page apology in your head. Sometimes it's going to bed before your body begs you to. Sometimes it's choosing peace instead of proving a point. Tiny decisions, quiet moments, invisible victories. That's where a new life begins. Not in one giant leap, but in 1,000 tiny steps nobody applauds. There is something I wish more people understood. You don't wake up one morning and become confident. You become confident by keeping promises that nobody knows you made. The promise to drink more water. The promise to walk for 10 minutes. The promise to stop speaking so cruelly to yourself. The promise to try again after failing. Every promise you keep is like placing one small brick. At first it looks like nothing. Weeks later, you realize you've been building a home inside yourself. A place where doubt doesn't echo quite as loudly. A place where hope finally has somewhere to live. Maybe you've been waiting for motivation. Can I tell you a secret? Motivation is one of the most unreliable roommates you'll ever have. It shows up late, leaves early, and never helps clean the mess. Discipline isn't much more exciting, but unlike motivation, it usually keeps its word. There will be mornings when you don't feel inspired, days when your heart feels heavy for reasons you can't explain, moments when doing nothing seems easier than trying. Those are the moments that quietly shape your future. Not because they are dramatic, because they are ordinary. Anyone can move when they feel inspired. The people who slowly transform their lives move anyway, even if the step is small, even if nobody notices, even if they have to encourage themselves. You know what's strange? We often wait until life falls apart before we finally listen to ourselves. The body whispers before it screams. The heart asks gently before it breaks. The mind sends quiet signals before it becomes exhausted. But we're busy answering messages, busy checking notifications, busy comparing our lives to people we've never met, until one day, silence becomes impossible to ignore. Maybe changing your life doesn't begin with doing more. Maybe it begins with listening more. Listening to the tiredness you've been calling laziness. Listening to the sadness you've been calling weakness. Listening to the dreams you've been calling unrealistic. Sometimes your heart isn't asking for a miracle. It's simply asking to be heard. Here's something life taught me. The person who is hardest to forgive is often yourself. You forgive strangers. You forgive friends. Sometimes you even forgive people who never apologized. Yet you keep replaying your own mistakes as if your heart were a courtroom. Sentence after sentence, year after year. Imagine carrying a backpack. Every mistake becomes another stone. Not because life put it there, because you refuse to take it out. No wonder you're tired. You've been carrying versions of yourself that no longer exist. The person who failed, the person who was rejected, the person who didn't know better. They've already finished their chapter. Why are they still writing today's story? And changing your life also means changing the way you speak to yourself. Imagine if someone followed you around all day, repeating every thought you have about yourself. Would you enjoy their company? Would you believe they loved you? Probably not. So why do we accept words from ourselves that we would never accept from anyone else? I'm not enough. I'm always behind. I'll never change. Those aren't facts. They're habits. And habits can be replaced, not overnight, but one sentence at a time. Maybe tomorrow, instead of saying, I have to fix my life, you could whisper, I'd like to take better care of it. The destination is the same. The journey feels completely different. Can I tell you something beautiful? Your life doesn't change the day everything becomes easy. It changes the day you stop waiting for easy, because life has never promised perfect conditions. It has only offered endless chances to begin again. The sunrise never asks if yesterday was successful. It simply rises. So tonight, don't promise yourself that tomorrow you'll become a brand new person. That's too much pressure for one sunrise. Instead, promise yourself one honest decision, one kinder word, one brave conversation, one small habit you'll still be grateful for next month. Because a beautiful life is rarely built in one unforgettable day. It's built in hundreds of ordinary evenings, just like this one, quietly, one gentle choice at a time. Sometimes we think changing our life means adding something new, a new habit, a new goal, a new opportunity. But what if your next chapter doesn't begin by adding? What if it begins by letting go? Not every empty space needs to be filled. Some spaces are meant to breathe. Look around your room. When every corner is crowded, even a beautiful home begins to feel smaller. The same thing happens inside the heart. Too many regrets, too many expectations, too many opinions that never belonged to you in the first place. No wonder you feel exhausted. You've been decorating your life with things you never wanted to keep. Maybe tonight is the night to open a few windows, to let fresh air enter your thoughts. There is an invisible habit many of us have. We postpone living. I'll be happy when. I'll rest after. I'll start once. It's amazing how creative we become when inventing reasons not to begin. The future quietly becomes a storage room. We place every dream inside it, every hope, every version of ourselves, and we promise, I'll come back for you someday. But tomorrow has a strange habit. It always introduces itself as today. Maybe the life you've been waiting for isn't standing somewhere in the distance. Maybe it's waiting inside a decision you've been avoiding. I used to think courage looked loud, a big speech, a dramatic goodbye, a fearless decision. Now I think courage often whispers. It sounds like I deserve a slower life. I don't have to answer right now. I can change my mind. I'm allowed to outgrow people, places, and habits that no longer help me become who I want to be. Quiet courage rarely receives applause, but it changes everything. Because the loudest decision isn't always the bravest. Sometimes the bravest decision is the one nobody notices except your own heart. Can I tell you something strange? Many people don't fear failure. They fear becoming unfamiliar to themselves. If you change, will people still understand you? Will they still expect the same version of you? Maybe not, but here's the beautiful part. You weren't born to become a museum. You weren't created to stay exactly the same forever. Trees grow new rings every year. Even the sky never keeps one color for long. Yet somehow, we expect ourselves to remain the same person for decades. Growth always feels unfamiliar. That's how you know it's real. There is another trap we rarely talk about. Being busy can become a hiding place. We fill every hour, every quiet moment. Not because life is exciting, because silence asks difficult questions. Are you happy? Is this really the life you wanted? Oh, what are you running from? Noise protects us from those questions. Silence invites us to answer them. Maybe changing your life begins with 5 quiet minutes. At first, it feels uncomfortable. Then it begins to feel like meeting an old friend you haven't seen in years. Yourself. There is nothing wrong with returning a dream that was never yours. Success means very little if you're climbing the wrong mountain. Have you noticed how children learn to walk? Nobody laughs because they fall. Nobody says, maybe walking isn't for you. Falling is expected. Somewhere along the way, we forget that. As adults, we think one mistake means we should stop trying. Imagine if you had given up after your first step. You would still be sitting on the floor, waiting for confidence to arrive. Confidence never arrived first. Movement did. It has always been that way. Take the step. Let confidence catch up later, and perhaps the greatest change you will ever make has nothing to do with your job, or your money, or where you live. Perhaps the greatest change is waking up one morning and no longer needing to prove that your life matters because it already does. Not when you achieve more. Not when someone finally notices you. Not when everything is perfect. Now, in this ordinary breath, in this quiet heartbeat, in this simple moment that asks nothing from you except to be fully lived, maybe that is the life you've been searching for all along. Not a different life, but a different way of seeing the one you already have. Maybe changing your life has never been about becoming someone else. Maybe it has always been about coming home. To yourself, the version of you that laughed without trying. The version of you that dreamed without asking for permission. The version of you that believed life could still surprise you. That person is not gone. They've simply been waiting for you to stop searching everywhere else. And finally, look within. You don't need another perfect morning. You don't need another motivational quote. You don't need to become 10 times stronger overnight. You only need one honest moment. The moment you stop saying, one day, and gently whisper, why not today? Because life doesn't usually change when the calendar changes. It changes when your choices do. One quiet choice, repeated again and again. So tonight, before you close your eyes, leave one thing behind. Not your dreams, not your hope. Only the version of you that believes it's too late. Because it isn't. As long as your heart is still beating, life is still writing. And here's the beautiful part. You don't know what the next page says. Maybe that's why it's worth turning. Thank you for sharing this quiet little corner of the world with me tonight. If these words found you when you needed them most, then maybe they were always meant to. Sleep peacefully. Be patient with the person you're becoming. One day, without even noticing when it happened. You'll become the kind of person your younger self would run toward with a smile. Not because you became perfect, but because you finally became yourself. Good night.
Hey everyone, welcome back. If you're listening to this at night, I hope your day wasn't too stressful.
And if it was stressful, hopefully this conversation helps your brain slow down a little.
Yeah. Tonight's topic is actually perfect before sleep. We're talking about small habits. Tiny things. Simple things. The kind of habits people usually ignore because they don't seem important.
Which is funny, because small habits quietly shape almost everything.
You know what's interesting? People often want dramatic change. A huge breakthrough. A completely new life.
Preferably by next Tuesday.
Exactly. But real life usually changes much more quietly than that.
Very quietly. Sometimes your life changes because of a 5-minute habit you repeated for 2 years. Not because of one big moment.
Okay, here's something I noticed about myself. For a long time, the last thing I saw before sleep was my phone.
That's most people now.
Yeah. And I didn't think it mattered much until I realized my brain never truly relaxed.
What changed?
I started spending 10 quiet minutes before sleep without scrolling. No videos, no notifications, no random information. Just silence.
That's actually more powerful than people realize. Because the brain needs transition time.
Transition time?
Which explains why some people feel tired, but mentally restless.
Yes. Their bodies are in bed, but their attention is still running. Can we talk about something people rarely discuss?
Sure.
The way people speak to themselves at night. I think nighttime is when negative thoughts become louder.
Because distractions disappear.
Yeah. And suddenly people start replaying mistakes, awkward moments, things they regret, things they should have done better.
The human brain has something called a negativity bias. Psychologically, negative experiences often stay in attention longer than positive ones. It's partly a survival mechanism.
So the brain naturally focuses on problems more easily?
Very often, yes. Which is why intentional self-talk matters.
You know something that helped me? Instead of ending the day by asking, what did I do wrong today? I started asking, what did I handle well today?
That's such a healthy shift, because reflection shouldn't only be criticism.
Exactly. Otherwise, your brain starts feeling like an unhappy manager.
A very toxic manager.
Here's another tiny habit that's surprisingly helpful. Preparing tomorrow before going to sleep.
That one genuinely reduces stress.
Why does it help so much?
Because uncertainty creates mental tension. When the brain feels unprepared, it keeps trying to mentally rehearse tomorrow, even during rest.
So planning a little before sleep gives the brain closure.
Exactly. Not over-planning, just enough clarity to reduce mental noise.
Sometimes I write only 3 things: what I need to do, what I want to focus on, and one thing I'm looking forward to.
I love that last one, because anticipation changes emotional energy. People need things to look forward to, even small things.
I think a lot of people have a strange relationship with rest.
In what way?
They treat rest like something they need to earn. So even while resting, they feel guilty.
That's becoming very common, especially in highly productive cultures.
Like if you're not constantly improving, you feel behind.
Exactly. But biologically speaking, rest is not laziness. It's maintenance.
Maintenance. I like that word.
Sleep affects memory, attention, mood regulation, decision-making, emotional control. A tired brain interprets life differently.
That's true. Everything feels heavier when you're exhausted.
Because the nervous system has fewer resources available. That's why protecting sleep is one of the highest return habits people can build.
You know, I think people underestimate how much life changes through ordinary evenings. Not dramatic moments, not huge achievements, just quiet nights repeated over time.
I agree. Because routines become identities surprisingly fast. The way you end your days slowly shapes the way you experience your life.
That's beautiful.
And honestly, a peaceful life is often built from peaceful evenings.
Can I mention something slightly unsettling?
Always.
I think people believe personality is much more fixed than it actually is.
That's true. Psychology has been moving away from that idea for years.
Right. Because when people say, I'm just an anxious person, I'm just bad at focusing, I'm just not disciplined, they often speak as if those things are permanent, when many of those traits are heavily influenced by repeated environments and behaviors. Meaning? Meaning your daily habits don't only shape your schedule, they slowly shape your emotional patterns too. That's fascinating. Can you give an example?
Sure. Imagine someone spends years constantly interrupting their attention. Checking notifications every few minutes, watching short-form videos for hours, switching rapidly between tasks, sleeping with background noise every night.
Which sounds suspiciously familiar to modern life.
Exactly. Over time, the brain adapts to fragmentation.
Fragmentation?
Yeah. Attention becomes less stable. Silence feels uncomfortable. Long conversations feel tiring. Deep focus becomes harder.
So people think their personality changed, but sometimes their nervous system changed first.
That's a very important distinction.
Yeah. And you know, a lot of people say normal life feels boring now.
That makes sense neurologically.
Really?
The human brain responds strongly to novelty, new information, fast emotional changes, unexpected stimulation. Modern platforms are extremely good at delivering that.
So real life starts competing with algorithm level stimulation?
Which is an unfair competition. Real life is slower. Conversations pause naturally. Learning takes time. Relationships develop gradually. Meaning builds quietly.
But the brain gets used to constant emotional movement.
Yeah. And then ordinary moments begin feeling emotionally understimulating. Not because life became empty, because the brain's stimulation baseline changed.
Wow. So some people aren't losing interest in life. They're losing sensitivity to slower forms of happiness.
That's beautifully said. And honestly, that's one of the hidden psychological costs of overstimulation.
Can I say something a little dramatic?
Please do.
I think some people don't actually need a new life. They need fewer inputs.
That sounds dramatic, but I genuinely think there's truth in it.
Because people absorb opinions all day now. Advice, news, trends, productivity systems, relationship advice, career advice, morning routines from people who wake up at 4:30 and drink mushroom water.
The mushroom water people are everywhere now.
Everywhere. And eventually people become mentally crowded.
That's actually a great description. Mentally crowded. The brain needs empty space sometimes. Not because emptiness is magical, but because clarity requires separation.
Do you think people spend so much time trying to find themselves?
Yeah. Like they're hidden in a forest somewhere.
Exactly. Like one day they're going to open a kitchen drawer and suddenly discover their true personality next to a spoon.
That would honestly make life much easier.
But I think a lot of people don't need to find themselves. They need to hear themselves again.
That's a really important difference.
Because modern life is loud. Not just physically loud, mentally loud, emotionally loud. People barely have time to process one thought before another video, message, opinion, or notification appears.
And when the brain stays overloaded for too long, people slowly lose connection with their natural preferences.
What do you mean?
A lot of people don't actually know what they enjoy anymore. They know what's addictive, they know what's distracting, they know what's stimulating. But peaceful enjoyment? That's becoming rarer.
Wow, that's true.
Sometimes I ask people simple questions like, what makes you feel calm? What makes you feel mentally clear? What kind of day makes you feel alive? And many people genuinely don't know.
Because they're spending more time reacting than reflecting.
Yeah. And when people finally slow down, at first it can feel uncomfortable.
Why?
Because many people are used to constant stimulation. Silence feels unfamiliar. Stillness feels unfamiliar. Being alone with your thoughts feels unfamiliar.
Which is kind of scary when you think about it.
A little. But it's also very human. The brain gets used to whatever environment it's repeatedly placed in.
So if someone constantly lives in noise, quiet starts feeling strange.
Exactly. But after a while, something interesting happens. The nervous system starts calming down. Your thoughts become clearer. You notice small things again.
You know, the older I get, the more I realize life is less about adding more things and more about removing things that quietly damage you. Because when people imagine a better life, they usually imagine gaining something. More money, more confidence, more success, more motivation. But honestly, some of the biggest improvements in my life happened when I removed certain things. Constant noise, constant comparison, the pressure to always be productive. The habit of checking my phone every 3 minutes like there was some international emergency involving me specifically.
Modern brains really do act like every notification is a national crisis.
Seriously. And what's scary is how normal that behavior became. People don't even notice how fragmented their attention is anymore. Like, someone watches half a video while replying to messages, while eating, while thinking about work, while opening another app. And then later they wonder why their brain feels tired all the time.
Because attention switching has a real cognitive cost. Even small interruptions force the brain to constantly reorient itself.
Right. And I think many people blame themselves for being unfocused when their environment is training them to lose focus every day. It's almost like trying to build strong legs while walking on ice constantly.
It's actually a very accurate comparison.
And here's another thing I don't think people talk about enough. A lot of people are overstimulated, but under-inspired. People consume huge amounts of content every day. Endless information, endless entertainment, endless scrolling. But very little of it truly moves them emotionally. Very little creates reflection. Very little changes them.
That's a powerful observation.
I think one of the biggest misunderstandings about habits is that people judge them by how dramatic they feel in the moment. But habits are sneaky. Most of them feel emotionally insignificant while they're happening. Nobody feels their life changing while drinking more water, sleeping earlier, reading 10 pages, or taking a short walk after dinner. The brain likes dramatic moments, so people ignore quiet improvements, even though quiet improvements are usually the ones that last.
That's true. The human brain is actually very bad at noticing slow change in real time. Psychologists call this gradual adaptation. Small behaviors repeated consistently start becoming automatic, and automatic behaviors eventually shape identity. That's why daily routines matter so much. Repetition changes the brain more effectively than intensity. A person who studies 20 minutes every day usually learns more long-term than someone who studies 10 hours once and disappears for a week.
And honestly, I think people quit good habits too early because the reward feels delayed. The brain loves immediate results. If you go to the gym once, you still look the same. If you practice English for 3 days, you still struggle sometimes. So people think nothing is happening. But invisible progress is still progress. Seeds also look unimpressive for a while before anything appears above the ground.
That's a great comparison because biological growth works exactly like that. The brain changes through repetition and reinforcement. Neural pathways strengthen when behaviors repeat frequently. That's one reason habits become easier over time. At first, the action feels forced because the brain is using more conscious effort. Later, the same behavior feels natural because the brain has already built a more efficient pathway for it.
Well, small bad habits often feel harmless because the consequences arrive slowly. Sleeping too late once isn't a disaster. Ignoring stress for one day isn't a disaster. Scrolling for an extra hour doesn't destroy your life immediately. But humans tend to underestimate cumulative effects. Tiny behaviors repeated for years quietly shape physical health, emotional stability, confidence, and attention span.
Yeah, human life is very cumulative. That's true biologically and psychologically. A lot of people imagine life changes through giant moments, but often life changes through accumulated direction. Tiny choices repeated over long periods create momentum. The difficult part is that momentum feels invisible while it's building. People notice outcomes much later and think the result appeared suddenly, even though the pattern existed for years.
I also think environment matters more than motivation. People blame themselves constantly for lacking discipline, but many environments are designed to destroy focus. Notifications, fast entertainment, constant comparison, endless stimulation. Then people wonder why calm habits feel difficult. It's hard to build a peaceful mind inside a chaotic system. That's why changing small parts of your environment can completely change behavior without relying on willpower all the time.
That's strongly supported by behavioral psychology. Humans are heavily influenced by cues and friction. If healthy behaviors become easier, people repeat them more often. If unhealthy behaviors become less convenient, many people naturally reduce them. For example, simply leaving the phone outside the bedroom improves sleep quality for some people because the environment no longer encourages midnight stimulation. Small physical changes often create surprisingly large behavioral effects.
And honestly, I think people should stop waiting to feel completely ready before improving their lives. Motivation is unstable. Some days you feel inspired. Other days you feel mentally tired for no clear reason. Habits are powerful because they reduce dependence on emotion. You don't need to negotiate with yourself every morning if the behavior already became part of your normal routine.
Exactly. Stable systems are usually more reliable than temporary motivation. That's why successful people often protect routines very carefully. Not because routines are exciting, but because routines reduce decision fatigue. The brain has limited mental energy each day. When useful behaviors become automatic, more attention becomes available for creativity, problem solving, relationships, and meaningful work instead of constant self-control battles.
And, I think many of us secretly believe life will finally feel peaceful after we fix everything, after we become more successful, more organized, more healed, more confident. But the strange thing is, life keeps moving while we're waiting to become a better version of ourselves. Sometimes we become so focused on improving our lives that we forget to actually experience them.
That's true. And psychologically, the brain adapts very quickly to achievements. People often imagine a future moment where everything suddenly feels complete, but human satisfaction usually works differently. Lasting well-being comes more from daily emotional patterns than huge accomplishments. That's why small, peaceful habits matter more than people expect.
And honestly, I think many of us are harder on ourselves than we realize. We talk to ourselves like disappointed managers instead of human beings. One mistake happens, and suddenly our brain acts like the entire week is ruined. But progress is usually messy. Real growth looks much more normal and imperfect than social media makes it seem. Absolutely. Research on behavior change shows that self-criticism often reduces consistency instead of improving it. People are more likely to continue healthy habits when the process feels supportive rather than punishing. A calm mind learns better than a constantly ashamed mind. I think many of us don't actually need more advice. We already know some basic things that would improve our lives. Sleep more, move our body, spend less time online, stop comparing ourselves to strangers. The difficult part isn't information anymore. It's building a lifestyle where our nervous system can actually follow what we already know.
That's a really important point. Modern life gives us endless information, but very little mental recovery. People often consume self-improvement content while staying emotionally exhausted. But exhausted brains struggle to create stable habits. That's why energy management matters just as much as time management.
And maybe that's why small habits become powerful. They don't only change schedules, they slowly change how life feels. Waking up without immediately checking our phone, sitting outside for 10 quiet minutes, talking honestly with someone, sleeping properly for a week. Those things sound simple, but emotionally, they can make the world feel completely different.
Because the nervous system responds strongly to repeated experiences. Small, calming behaviors, repeated consistently, can slowly teach the brain that life is not an emergency all the time. And honestly, many people need that reminder more than they realize.
I think our brains are tired of acting like every email is a survival situation.
Biologically speaking, most notifications are not life-threatening.
Exactly. And maybe one of the healthiest things we can do now is stop treating ourselves like machines that should perform perfectly every day. Humans are seasonal. Some days our brain feels clear and focused. Other days we feel slower, emotional, distracted, or mentally heavy for no obvious reason. That's normal. We're not failing every time we feel human.
And understanding that often improves consistency. People who accept natural emotional fluctuations usually recover faster from difficult days. They don't waste extra energy fighting reality. They adjust, reset, and continue.
I really think that's one of the quiet habits that changes life. Learning how to continue gently instead of constantly starting over dramatically.
Yeah, because many of us don't need another extreme reset. We probably just need calmer systems, clearer priorities, better sleep, healthier attention, and a little more patience with ourselves.
You know, after this whole conversation, I keep thinking about how life changes in ways we barely notice at first. Most meaningful habits don't feel dramatic when they begin. Drinking more water doesn't feel life-changing. Sleeping earlier doesn't feel life-changing. Taking a quiet walk, reading a few pages, putting our phone down for a while. None of those moments feel huge, but slowly they change how our brain feels, how our body feels, how we respond to stress, how we speak to people, how we experience ordinary days. And honestly, I think that's comforting, because it means we don't need to rebuild our entire lives overnight. We don't need to become perfect next week. Small habits are powerful because they give us another chance every single day, another chance to reset our attention, protect our peace, and slowly become someone who feels healthier, calmer, and more present.
I agree. And maybe that's the biggest takeaway from all of this. Our lives are shaped less by rare, huge moments and more by repeated, ordinary moments. The things we practice emotionally, mentally, and physically become part of us over time. That's why tiny habits matter. They're not tiny after enough repetition. And honestly, improving life is often less about becoming a completely different person and more about taking better care of the person we already are.
That's beautiful. All right, everyone. Thank you for spending this time with us tonight. If you're listening before sleep, hopefully this conversation helped your mind slow down a little. Take care of yourselves, rest well, and remember, small, peaceful habits may look ordinary, but over time, they quietly shape an extraordinary life. Hello, everyone, and welcome back. We're really happy you're here. Tonight isn't about changing your whole life. It's about something much smaller, something so ordinary that most people never notice it, until one day they realize that ordinary moments quietly built the life they're living.
It's funny, isn't it? People love dramatic stories, big wins, huge changes, amazing transformations. But real life? Real life usually looks like brushing your teeth while thinking about tomorrow, making your bed even when nobody will see it, or drinking a glass of water because your body deserves that tiny act of kindness.
That's true. We often imagine that happiness will arrive with fireworks. Instead, it usually knocks on the door wearing slippers.
I love that image.
Me too, because routines aren't exciting at first. They're almost invisible. But invisible things can become incredibly powerful. Think about air. You don't notice it until it's gone. Daily habits are a little like that.
Well, motivation is loud, but routine is quiet. Motivation tells you today is the day. Routine simply says, welcome back.
And honestly, I trust routine more.
Me too. Motivation has canceled on me so many times.
Exactly. Routine rarely sends excuses. It just waits. Every day, it's standing in the same place saying, ready whenever you are.
That's comforting somehow. It doesn't judge. It doesn't complain because you missed yesterday. It simply gives you another chance today.
I think that's why routines can feel peaceful. They don't ask you to become another person overnight. They simply invite you to become a slightly better version of yourself, one small step at a time.
People often ask how successful people stay disciplined. I don't think discipline always feels strong. Sometimes discipline looks incredibly ordinary.
Like putting your phone down 5 minutes earlier, or washing one dirty plate instead of leaving it for tomorrow.
None of those moments would ever become headlines, yet those tiny moments quietly shape our character.
It's almost unfair how small the important things are.
That's because our brains love exciting shortcuts. We keep searching for the perfect morning routine, the perfect notebook, the perfect app, the perfect playlist, while ignoring the fact that consistency beats perfection almost every single time.
I used to think I needed the perfect mood before starting anything.
Oh, I know that feeling.
We expect immediate results from tiny actions. Then we quit because nothing changed after 3 days. Meanwhile, we forget that trees don't grow by pulling on their branches.
They grow because someone keeps watering the roots. I think our lives work the same way. Small habits are like watering roots. Nobody applauds you while you're doing them.
Oh, yes.
You don't need permission to improve your life. You don't need applause either. Imagine planting a seed every single day. Some days you'll wonder if anything is happening. Underground, everything is happening. Growth is often invisible before it becomes obvious.
I hope someone listening tonight really hears that. Maybe they only need a different tomorrow morning.
And tomorrow morning begins with tonight.
Exactly. Even this quiet conversation is part of a routine now. You know, I used to believe that a good day had to feel exciting from the moment I opened my eyes. If nothing special happened, I thought I had wasted the day. It took me a long time to realize that peaceful days are not boring. They're often the days that quietly heal us without asking for attention.
I completely understand that. We sometimes confuse peace with emptiness because peace doesn't make much noise. It doesn't demand to be noticed. It simply sits beside us while we drink water, clean the room, fold our clothes, or walk slowly without checking our phones every few seconds.
I noticed something interesting about people. We often celebrate huge achievements, but we rarely celebrate the little promises we keep to ourselves. Waking up when we plan to, finishing one simple task, taking care of our body. Those moments may look ordinary, but they quietly build self-respect.
That's such an important point. Confidence isn't only built by doing difficult things. Sometimes confidence grows because we prove to ourselves that our own words actually mean something. Every small promise we keep becomes another reason to trust ourselves, just a little bit more.
And trust is funny. We spend years trying to earn other people's trust, yet we sometimes forget about the person who listens to every promise we make, ourselves. We hear every excuse, every delay, every "I'll do it tomorrow." Eventually, we stop believing our own words.
Yeah, that's why I try to make smaller promises now. Instead of saying I'll completely change my life, I simply tell myself I'll take the first step. Small promises are easier to keep, and every time I keep one, it feels like I'm slowly becoming someone I can depend on.
Real life doesn't care about perfect checklists. It cares about showing up again. Missing one habit doesn't ruin your progress. Giving up because you missed one habit usually does. That's a huge difference that many people don't notice until much later.
There's something comforting about starting over without feeling guilty. Every new day quietly says, you can try again. It never asks how many mistakes you made yesterday. It simply opens the door one more time and waits to see what you'll do next.
I love that idea, because kindness isn't only something we give to other people. Sometimes the kindest thing we can do is stop talking to ourselves like we're our own worst enemy. A gentle voice inside your head can completely change the way your whole day feels.
Maybe that's one of the healthiest routines anyone can build. Speak to yourself the way you'd speak to someone you truly care about. Not because you're perfect, but because you're still learning, growing, and trying. That's already something worth respecting.
People joke about bedtime routines, but peaceful habits quietly save mental health.
Even something simple like putting the phone away for 10 minutes.
That's hard, though. Phones became emotional support rectangles.
True. People say one last video and suddenly birds are singing outside.
Nothing screams productivity like ruining tomorrow while learning how to improve your future.
Humans are complicated creatures.
All right, everyone. Thank you for spending this quiet little moment with us tonight. Life moves so fast that sometimes people forget to sit with their own thoughts for even 5 minutes. So if you stayed here until the end, seriously, thank you. Maybe today was productive. Maybe it was messy. Maybe you're still figuring things out right now while lying in bed staring at the ceiling. And honestly, that's okay. Not every season of life is supposed to look perfect. Some seasons are just about surviving quietly and trying again tomorrow.
All right. Go get some rest, everybody. Thank you for being here with us tonight. Really. We hope your room feels a little quieter now, and your heart feels a little lighter, too. Sleep gently, take care of your mind, and we'll talk again very soon. Good night, everyone.